Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope you are well. I'm good too, alhamdulillah. I'm here with a very interesting speaker and a very interesting topic, which is exploring the city of Lahore from the perspective of saints, its identity as a city of saints, and how it has been shaped, and how a lot of architecture within the city has been shaped by the saints and their knowledge. And we will dive into it, how and why, how and where, with Mr. Rameez Haider. Okay, so his profile is very interesting, so I would like to read to you. Well, Syed Rameez Haider is an architect, he is a painter, and he is also a music enthusiast. And today we are having him as an art enthusiast. So I'll just quote what he likes to, how he likes to explain himself, or how his profile is amazing for today's lecture. And because today's session is today's presentation is going to be a lot different, so you need to know about him first in order to understand the presentation and why we are having it on our series. Okay, so Rameez is exploring and teaching geometrical proportions implied in Mughal and Persian miniature painting compositions at Hastoneest Institute of Traditional Arts in Lahore. And in order to explain classical music and his tradition altogether, Rameez became a disciple of Ustad Rustam Fateh Khan of Patiala gharana art, which he uses for meditation and peace of mind. Rameez has a profound indulgence in South Asian culture and history which reflects color, inclusion, togetherness, elements which he believes should be reflected in design of our cities and neighborhoods. And he takes the concept of recolonization of South Asia as a thesis of his life. So we are having him today on our series, on our episode, to discuss how he like to share his passion and exploring and studying the buildings in Lahore and around the city and other cities of Pakistan as well. So let's welcome him on the episode on our show, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Do share your feedback. Mr. Rameez, how are you and how's life going?
Well, it's going well. Has been a little busy this last month because I had my semester ending at concerts. I teach there, so we, compiling the results and conducting juries and all. So the work in the office I work simultaneously at was also quite much. So I was quite busy, and hence the delay.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that you have made time for this and you have prepared a presentation on a topic that seems tough to me, but since you were passionate about it, I'm glad that you've made time for it. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and for sharing your passion on our platform. So I'm looking forward to it. Go ahead and share about your love for the city and for sharing with us the identity of Lahore in terms of saints, from the view of saints and all that, whatever you have to share. Thank you so much. Let's begin.
All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The title of the presentation is Tranquility of the Saint. It was a book written by Dara Shikoh Qadri. Firstly, let me introduce Dara Shikoh for those who are not familiar with the name. Dara Shikoh was the eldest son of Emperor Shah Jahan, and he was believed to be the heir apparent to the Mughal throne after his father, but he lost it to his younger brother Aurangzeb, who I think most of you would be aware of, who then became the Mughal emperor after his father. But Dara Shikoh was to be so loved by the people and believed to be their next emperor, and also quite revered following his inclusive religious worldview. And so, as I said earlier, that he was the heir apparent, and this presentation is an humble attempt to illustrate his spiritual anecdote by introducing his Sufi masters, his adherence towards them, and his own paradise he envisaged around those exalted presences. And In the picture above, you may see Dara Shikoh, in dialogue with Hazrat Mia Mir, who was the Sheikh or the Sufi of Dara Shikoh's Sufi master, Mullah Shah, who we can see at the left bottom of the picture of the miniature painting. So if you can see the cursor, the cursor is on Mullah Shah.
Yes.
This is Hazrat Mia Mir,
Yes.
and sitting in front of Mia Mir is Dara Shikoh, the Prince Dara Shikoh himself. And this must be, early 1600s, 1610s, 1620s, 1620s and 30s, I suppose. I don't know the exact date, and we'll come to that later. This was how this whole precinct, which we are going to focus on, would have looked like in 17th century, and Dara Shikoh, planned much more than what it eventually turned out to be. So here are two miniature paintings of that time. Both show Hazrat Mia Mir and Dara Shikoh. And Hazrat Mia Mir is, I think, recognizable, pretty much recognizable in both the pictures, because this central figure looks the same in both pictures. So we have already seen the picture on the left. The picture on the right has in the center Mullah Shah, Dara Shikoh's Sufi, having a discussion with Hazrat Mia Mir, and sitting beside Mullah Shah is Dara Shikoh himself, with other Mughal nobles at the bottom of the painting. Well, here in both the paintings, you see Hazrat Mia Mir dressed and Hazrat Mullah Shah dressed quite well, and in the royal attire. That is just an attempt to signify their royal stature. Otherwise, in reality, they would be much simply dressed. So this is again another painting which shows Hazrat Mia Mir in exchange of knowledge with his disciples and some of the nobles. And the title of the book which Dara Shikoh wrote, and on the extreme right you see Dara Shikoh sitting in a very ascetic pose. So there you may understand that this sort of sort of a sense of what should I say, there was a certain sense of civilization. Even the prince was quite civilized, because he represented that particular sense of civilization, because it was somehow coming from or related to these saints or their teachings.
Yeah.
And yes, Asba.
I would like to comment here that these paintings reminded me of the books that I read about Rumi, and he, in the books, there's mentioned that there used to be students and the teachers sitting around, and they used to have the conversations, and they used to share knowledge and learn from the majlis system. In which people, student and teachers sat together, and they used to have discussions. And this is how religion has been in the past as well. Like we read about Hazrat Muhammad used to sit with Sahaba Kram and with the companions, and they used to share knowledge and learn from each other. And it reminded me of how religious education is passed down from teacher to students and vice versa. And exactly this is how saints used to educate people as well. So this is such a humbling experience, and these pictures have taken me back to that time. So awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, yeah.
So the picture, I think it was even it's said to be dated in 1670. It means that it was painted even after death of Dara Shikoh and during the rule of Aurangzeb, because Dara Shikoh, I suppose, died or was executed in 1658, I suppose. So here the saints are sitting again in front of the mountains and waterfall at the back. The mountains, they symbolize stability as they stabilize the earth. So here one can say that mountain symbolism reflects saints being able to stabilize the turbulence of the earth. It is, I think, also one of the hadiths that the judgment day won't come till there is but one such an exalted individual. I don't remember the exact words, but this is what it meant. Um, then he has, he has discussed the attributes of the saints in a lot of detail, but the salient features are that Sufi Saint Sheikh is the custodian of esoteric batini, the inward teachings of Islam, the spiritual teachings of Islam, and this such a knowledge gets transferred from heart to heart, and hence it one needs such an such an intimate majlis, or such it requires a certain kind of companionship with your saint. You have to spend a certain amount of time with your saint so that you can actually transfer uh, the knowledge from his heart to your heart, because again it is an inward form of knowledge, so hence it cannot be just taught. One learns from experience. When he submits to a Sufi master or his teacher, he then learns through the practical experience by seeing his Sufi master leading a certain way of life, and hence educating his disciples through practical examples. And heart of the Sufi is blessed with the Muhammadan grace, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam baraka, and disciple or murid is again relinquished, disembodied. He has to give away his titles. He has to give away his belongings, and has to submit to his master in order to find the right path which leads to the Almighty. And Pevastan Kunandan is the state in which he sort of uh, gets into, which is the state of adheration and absorption. uh, some excerpts from the book by Sayyid Hussain and levels of divine effusion. uh, So basically, according to the Sufis, these are generally the realms of being through which God's blessing gets, uh, transferred from heavens to the earth. And the divine spirit that is above all, and then there is spiritual world, and then there is the world of imagination, and then there's the physical world where we live and reside. And the exalted ones are believed to be are believed to ascend through these levels. And Muhammad, the most complete of all the mankind, obviously, he traveled further, and he passed through these realms to eventually see the throne of God in heavens, and meet his beloved. And it is further then on the left illustrated that Islamic spirituality, it gets through Muhammadan grace and Quranic revelation, it gets communicated to the ulama, to the saints, and through the saints, the disciple, followers, craftsperson, and basically the followers, they get their blessings. And why the reason I have added craftsman here, because an artist, a traditional artist, an artist representing Islamic art and spirituality will have to undergo will have to have a similar kind of attitude, in which he submits and to his master, and he adheres to his master's teachings and his way of life, and through that he becomes a master himself also. uh, so again, this effusion, this uh, uh, what should I say, this journey from the higher realms to the lower realm. And uh, why it is said uh, uh, through uh, through Quran and Hadith that God has created man in His image. A few examples from while creating Adam, from Surah Sad in Quran, verse 72. And when I have fashioned him, Adam, and breathed into him my spirit, then fall down before him and prostrate. Uh, he commanded the angels to prostrate before the first image of the man that he created. And it comes in Hadith, like I was saying earlier, that God created Adam, or the man, in his image. And it comes in Bible also that God created man in his own image. The image of the God, he created him, male and female, he created them. And uh, the light of God's knowledge, it diffuses down to the heart of the saint, and through that heart of the saint one can acquire the path which vertically leads to the creator himself. So at the level of the microcosm, at the level of the symbol, if one needs to find a certain kind of murshid, teacher, a saintly figure, an alim, through which one can find a way back to his ultimate source and origin, the God Almighty himself. um, Man is, again, some excerpts from the book that is mentioned on the right. Symbol and Archetype by Martin Links, also known as Sheikh Abu Bakr. Man is the greatest of earthly symbols. Human virtues are projections of divine qualities onto the man. By divine qualities, I allude to the 99 names of Allah, how He has made Himself comprehensible through His 99 attributes or sifat. And one gets more complete and exalted if he gets if he attains all those qualities, or if he yearns to attain all those mentioned 99 qualities or attributes or names of Allah. And symbol is the reflection or shadow of the higher reality. In that way, man becomes the symbol, earthly symbol of the divine. um, so archetype, symbol, microcosm, uh, eternity, ephemerality, infinitude, finitude, absolute, relative, spirit, heart, sun, moon. Inexperienced symbol, one must experience the archetype also. So on the right, you may see that this is the worldly realm, the realm of the man, the realm of the symbol, and on the left is the heavenly realm. But this realm, although it is temporal, it is ephemeral, it is finite, but it essentially is the reflection of the realm that is true, that is heavenly, and that resides with God Himself. That is how I illustrate what I mentioned earlier, that God has created man in His image. So, so a miniature painting also actually uh, paints man as a symbol. Hence, the two dimension comes into play. Hence, the even the king is painted. He's painted with very delicate features and very delicate hands, uh, and feet, so as to illustrate them as, you know Ajsam Latif, or the delicate beings, that as these beings are just merely symbols and reflections, they are not real ones. Also, this painting shows us what we have talked about, uh, that the kings, the Mughal kings or the Muslim kings, also used to legitimize their rule, their kingship, on the basis of their adherence towards the Sufi saints and kings. This painting, painted by Bichitra in last of Jahangir days, almost last of Jahangir days, shows, and this title of this painting is, as mentioned, Jahangir preferring Sufi saints to kings. And uh, you may see that Jahangir probably is giving a book, or from giving a book to the Sufi saint, probably the Quran, and the Sufi is obviously, bringing forth his chadar, bringing forth his shawl to have the book. And below, it gets quite interesting here, that below the Sufi king is the Ottoman Empire emperor of that time. Below the Ottoman emperor is the emperor of England of that time, and at the lowest corner is the self portrait of the artist Bichitra himself. Uh, this is one of my favorite paintings, and this is also done by Bichitra, and it also says Shah Jahan receiving his sons upon his coronation. And if you closely observe, at the center, you find Sufi saints, aside the chain of justice, which this painting quite much illustrates, that adherence to the Sufi teachings was central to the Mughal court, and hence it is centralized here in this painting also. So now I'm going to, give you a little sort of an existential shock by doing, a geometrical analysis of the painting on the right, and how the painting was composed, and not to forget that the emperors used to, or the emperors were called Zil-e-Ilahi, and that actually essentially means the shadow of God on earth. Like I said, that while attaching to the Sufi masters, they sought legitimacy, some sort of, spiritual or godly legitimacy, to rule. This is the full view of the painting. On the left, you may see the nobility, and on the right is the painting, which I showed earlier. Firstly, a square, uh, and then you divide the square in order to highlight the center. The root 2 proportion, basically the proportion of the diagonal is taken upward through the arc. I'd explain it further while I'll do an analysis, do the similar kind of analysis over the building. And then the center of the whole painting is taken, and then the uh, both halves of the painting are then, bisected by drawing the angles, and this now illustrates the beauty of it, that at the upper junction you find the emperor himself, and in the middle of everything you find the Sufi sheikhs, the chain of justice, and and the lamb and the lion, which shows that, the lion and the lamb drinking from the same bank, which shows the emperor's justice. And on the lowest junction, you find Mughal nobility. So this painting quite much illustrates what the thesis that I have been trying to establish for the last few minutes. So moving on to also, I wanted to illustrate that how the proportions and the alignment of different elements of the painting have been done on the basis of this resulting grid, and not to forget that when you divide a particular space uh, uh, with the full diagonal and the half diagonal, the crossing of the full diagonal and the half diagonal essentially divides the whole thing into three. So here you may see that the painting is essentially divided into three, and if you look in the center, this one third division has the emperor's seat. Uh, so in that way, the painting is essentially divided into three parts, and on the central part we have the emperor and uh, his seat, or the balcony in which he's sitting. Um, this also tells us the value of proportion and rhythm. Uh, uh, and proportion and rhythm is important. Harmony is important in art forms also, to correspond to that cosmological worldview where one is seeking ascension to the Almighty. Um, tomb symbolism. Here, I would quickly move forward through it. That the circle represents the archetypal idea of the space, and polygons progress in terms of numbers of their size by quality of their proximity to the circle. The more the number of the sides, the polygon will move closer to the circular form. But the inherent quality of the circle lies in sixness. Sixness alludes to the completion of the idea of direction: center, up, down, sideways, diagonals. And hexagon is obviously the resulting polygon. If we divide the circle into six, and six is also regarded as the perfect number, as it is the sum of first three rational numbers. 1 to 3 is equal to 6. And on the lowest figure, you see that sixness somehow also uh, 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 generate a face-on view of the cube. Um, so as it is apparent that Kaaba, the Holy Kaaba, has a cubical form, but it has a deep underlying symbolic value. In worldly bounds, God's throne is manifested by a cubical form, owing to its six surfaces, and in it, that way, a cube is able to unify all basic polygons. The roof symbolizes heaven, while uh, the ground represents the world. The four sides point in four basic directions: north, south, east, west. This fourness always also corresponds to the four elements, the four seasons in a year. And why I am mentioning Kaaba, because the idea of tomb basically follows the architecture of, or the layout of the Almighty's temple, that is the Holy Kaaba. And the important thing is that on the left corner, the Iraqi corner, lies the black stone. That is also the point from where Zamzam water erupts out of the ground. And this alludes to the heavenly symbol of throne of God that is lifted over a water source from where the water canals come out. And this idea also forms the basis of architecture of tomb or mausoleum, because when the Prophet ascended to Miraj to meet his beloved, he saw his throne, and he illustrates, and he tells, he picturizes the dome by saying that a white marble dome uh, sitting over four pillars, and from within that throne emerge the four canals of water. So the symbolism of Chaharbagh and the centralized tomb complex actually comes from there. The prophet's illustration of the throne of God that he saw in heaven. And well, when the static square and the active sphere, when they get superimposed, they result in this eight-sided geometry we refer to as Hasht, Bahisht, or the eight paradises. So basically, uh, paradise is believed to be divided into seven realms, seven levels, and on the seventh level, God's throne is, and it is then further divided into eight further paradises. And this particular symbol actually uh, represent represents that level and also the throne of God itself. And on the right, you see Sheikh Ibn Arabi's illustrations of the God's throne in his book Fatwa al-Makkiyah. And you can here see that, there are four pillars around the central cube, which are supposedly lifting the bearers of the divine throne, according to Ibn Arabi. Um, and hence the Mughal or Islamic tombs, uh, they get their geometry from that particular concept. And this is the Humayun's tomb, and you can see a central tomb complex divided into four sections with the white dome above, signifying or symbolizing the pearl dome that the Prophet saw in the heavens. And from within, there emerge four canals of water, and around those canals we see different gardens. Uh, Again, the Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal is quite interesting because uh, as uh, instead of placing the tomb in the center, Shah Jahan asked to take it to the bank so that from the other side he could see the reflection of the tomb in the Jamuna. But again, it represents, and here the symbolism of throne is further illustrated by placing the four pillars on the corners, which, as was shown in the previous slide, on the right, on the top right, you see the drawing by Ibn Arabi, in which the four pillars are clearly illustrated, and this is what exactly the architect. So on the gate of Taj Mahal, there is written Surah Fajr, and last ayat of the surah says that Fadkhuli fi ibadi wadkhuli jannati. I hope I'm not saying it wrong, which means that enter uh, 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 the heaven of that the doors of heaven are open to you, and enter the heaven. Uh, uh, Again, I don't remember the exact translation, but this is what it refers to. Um, so the plan of the Taj, basically, uh, again, the central four canals, and on top the building, the white marble pavilion, which clearly represents the throne of God here. Uh, the symbolism of the four pillars, like I illustrated earlier, and the plan on the right, clearly what we were referring to earlier, uh, the the division, uh, along the division of the building, upward, sideways, and through the diagonals. Uh, and the form essentially is cubical. here also. And like I illustrated earlier, that the static square and the rotated square superimposed to form the octagon in the center. So again, it has to be another presentation in which we will talk about Taj Mahal, uh, because again it is quite much in itself. So now moving on to the precinct of tombs, all of the shayukh of the saints we talked about earlier, the saints of Dara Shikoh. This one is the tomb of Hazrat Mia Mir, uh, the supreme of all the saints. It is in Lahore, not to forget.
Yeah.
And this master plan, or the Google Earth view uh, of the tomb, tells a very tragic sort of anecdote, basically. So the above yellow box is the tomb complex, and the project was initiated by Dara Shikoh and was commissioned by Dara Shikoh. And in front of the Chahar Bagh, or the garden that you see in front of the tomb complex, was basically a water pavilion. And in the center was his baradari, or his pavilion, where he used to go and rest. But what happened was that I'll come back to the story later, but let me introduce you to the precinct and the other shayukh who are buried here. So basically, I've tried to, through the sketch, tried to envisage the kind of learning atmosphere they had together. Uh, Sketch of Dara Shikoh seeking wisdom from his sheikh, and this figure on the right sort of illustrates the major tombs we have over there. And Miami's tomb lies in the center, and on the lowest, at the bottom, you see the tomb of Nadra Begum, and other names with other tombs are written. There's a tomb of Hazrat Khwaja Bihari, Mullah Shah, who was the saint of Dara Shikoh himself and Miantha. And here, on the left, you again see the Google Earth image. On the yellow one is Miami's tomb, and across the railway line through this dense neighborhood, you see the tomb of Hazrat Khwaja Bihari and the tomb of Hazrat Mullah Shah, who again, I'm repeating, was the Sufi master of Dara Shikoh, Prince Dara Shikoh. And obviously, these tombs were not like that. They were, luscious gardens around them.
Okay, so it used to be the gardens around the tombs, and they were connected like a complex, but later they were.
Well, I have sort of tried. Later would come a sketch in which I have tried to illustrate the whole complex.
Yeah. But I was trying to ask that the housing developments changed the whole scenario, or the whole urban artifact, right? Urban planning of the area, right? Okay.
Yeah. So this is the tomb of Miami. It is being restored. So these are very recent images. All right, this tomb and the tomb of other saints were commissioned by Dara Shikoh because while he was alive, Hazrat Miami died. So the construction of the tomb started, and it had reached up to the dado level, which is about like a meter high, when Dara Shikoh got into war and was executed. So the tomb was later completed by his brother Aurangzeb. Many believe in the myth that Aurangzeb tried to demolish this tomb, and it was built by Dara Shikoh. I want to clear the fact here that clearly put the fact here that it was actually built by Aurangzeb, and it was built up till the Dedo level during Aurangzeb's time. But one can say that it could have been much more grand than it is now, or then it was after the Dara Shikoh's defeat, because people also say that uh, the sandstone that is used over Bachai Mosque, and that Bachai Mosque is built with or cladded with, was actually for a pathway or road from Dara Shikoh's house in the walled city to Miami's tomb. So he got all this red sandstone for that particular pathway, but then obviously the road was never made, and that particular sandstone was then used to construct Bachai Mosque by Aurangzeb Alamgir. So these are further images which show the mosque
Yes.
inside the tomb complex, the boundary wall which is being restored, and the later added library during Sikh era, and the interior, the ceiling of the tomb uh, on the upper left corner is also shown. The tomb. This is the present condition of the tomb. Mullah Shah, who was the saint of Darashikoh, his grave, and the gate. That's only surviving gate that leads to the tomb. And a takhti or plate is also there, which sort of tells the whole story. Tomb of Khwaja Bihari. It was restored somewhere around 90s. Hence, the frescoes are intact. The uh, Done by very prominent Ustad Saifur Rahman. The grave, the interior frescoes. Unfortunately, all the Ghalib Kari or the seam bandi on the dome is hidden by these uh,
Decorations.
decorations. Yeah, decorations. There is a certain name of this kind of decoration I have forgotten. Uh,
Yeah, it's we used to see them in Milad during Eid Miladun Nabi in the
huh,
streets, right?
huh, huh, Absolutely, absolutely. So here some of the color symbolism illustrated that white represents purity, black darkness, red blood, strength, dominance, yellow truth, beauty, green life, resurrection, prosperity, blue blessing, deliverance, color of the sky, etc. The tomb of the Nadra Begum. I was waiting to come to here. Actually, this was never a tomb. It was basically a pavilion around which there were water bodies, and this was basically a place of retreat for Darashikoh. So after losing the battle of Samgar, he was on the run, and during his his journey, his wife died, and obviously he could not have built a tomb for his wife in that condition while he was on the run, and he was hiding from the forces of his brother Aurangzeb. So he asked his soldiers to take the body of his deceased wife and bury inside his pavilion in front of Miami's tomb. So this was never meant to be a tomb. It was actually a pavilion for Darashiko's retreat, because he was on the run after losing the battle, and his wife died, and he could not have built a tomb for her in those conditions. So he got her buried here in his own property, which was that pavilion. Again, a very sad and tragic ending to this. And on picture in the picture on the left, you can see there's greenery around, but uh, it was a water garden, like Hiran Mirar in Lahore. And this bridge clearly tells us that actually this was water all around. And uh, a little light on the sacred funerary structures act as reminders of man's spiritual ascension to his lost perfection. These structures are outward manifestations of God's omnipresent beingness by acting as portals for man to connect to his origin through the graves of the gods, favored and good. This is the present. Uh, so, like I earlier said, going back to what is written over here, like I earlier said that uh, one needs to go to the Sufi saint in order to find the path leading to God. Similarly, by that analogy, one finds God also by visiting tombs of these saints, because then those graves act as reminders of the God's presence, the God's presence, as those graves being uh, uh, as those graves housing his exalted ones, his loved ones, his followers. So this is the sketch of the present condition of the precinct, the present condition of the neighborhood. You see that there is the tomb complex on the top, and there is some government building in the middle, and in front of it there is this charbagh, the gardens, and in the center is the Nadra Begum's tomb, which was again meant to be the pavilion. And here one can say this is how it was. It could have must have looked like inside. Uh, there were. If you are you able to see the cursor?
Yes, I
These
can.
gates.
Yes, I can.
Huh, these gates which are beside the tomb were not actually there. So one was supposed to enter from these gates here. So firstly, one pays respect or to the sheikh, sees the tomb from afar, and then go to get his blessings to his grave. And in front, through this gate, Dara Shikoh used to go to his water pavilion, and in the center he used to go for the retreat and so. And again, the illustration of
Interesting.
the prince himself, but he never got to see the finished tomb. So this particular illustration actually alludes to the imagined scenario in which the spirit of Darashako came to pay respect to his saint, because again he never saw the tomb being completed. He saw it up till the dead of it, probably.
Here we are seeing your sketching skills, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, just for the sake of information, all of the hand-drawn illustrations are done by me. My
I'm able to
humble
recognize. I'm able to recognize it, and it's awesome. Excellent effort.
Thank you. So now, like we did in the miniature painting, we'll try to geometrically analyze this tomb complex also to get the idea of uh, the harmony and the proportion involved in laying out this particular tomb complex. Like I said earlier, why proportion, harmony, and rhythm is important, because it represents the the cosmic order that the God Almighty commands through his prophets and the prophets' progeny and the saints. So one particular tool is the use of these dynamic rectangles, that how through the arc drawn through the diagonals, how the square progresses into certain proportions we refer to as root 2, root 3, root 4 proportions. So basically, if you open the compass as much as the diagonal and you draw the arc, the resulting measurement would be root 2 in proportion, the side of the square being taken 1 initially, and there and henceforth uh, it progresses gradually into root 3, root 4, root 5, etc. Thereafter it progresses into these particular proportions. So this is actually one way of uh, making a harmonic progression of the square, that essentially all of these particular proportions are getting generated from the square. So that again, that idea of coming from one and returning to one is there. uh, the Hashbahish symbol we talked about earlier, the eight paradise symbol, um, and the golden ratio, the golden proportion. All of all of these we will use in this particular analysis, the forthcoming analysis of Miami complex. So this is the plan of the complex. If you see the cursor, so originally it was supposed to be a square complex. This part was later added by Aurangzeb, and currently this has the tomb in the center, the mosque here above. These structures were added in 19th century by Mehboob Shah, some devotee who added the ablution section and the library, langar khana, dispensary, etc. And other structures were added later. One langar khana building, uh, and many graves and other tombs of saints, devotees, and his followers, and some Gaddi Nishins. So these entrances on the top, they were added later in 1964. And these are actually the original entrances, the originally ones, uh, which were supposed to be built following the original plan. So again, firstly, we draw the square. We then diagonally and uh, we draw the longitude, latitude, and the diagonals in order to divide the square. The root 2 proportion, the root 3 proportion. So one can say the extension that was added could have been added through that proportion. Again, these are not based on any sort of available data. These are, one can say, suppositions based on some precedent studies. Uh, Found in other Mughal buildings. And after that, by introducing the diagonals I talked about, that when the full diagonal of the square or any particular four-sided polygon and the half of its diagonal, they coincide, they give they divide the whole into three parts basically. So this is the 1/3 of the whole complex, and this now houses the mosque. So this gives you the proportion of the scale of the mosque. Afterwards, we introduce the golden section. Again, it is supposed because this was actually used in many of the Mughal buildings as a tool for proportioning. And here, these lines further coming in the center are actually generated following that golden cut, which can be seen above in this particular slide. And on the center of this root 3 area, you see it gives you the idea, gives you the gates that were basically, while being in that root 3 system, the diagonal square, the rotated square that is coming out uh, in this square above, it is mirrored but while remaining in the limit of that root 2 proportion. Here, you can see the mirroring here. You can see it, right?
I can see it, but I just lost you when you are just saying that it's root 3 and root 2. Like I I'm thinking that it's in root 2. The Ivans are in root 2. Like when we divide the root 2, the mid
The middle
part.
of
Yeah, the
the
middle of the
Ivans are
root
in
2.
middle of the root 2, the
Yeah,
middle of the root 2 proportion.
yeah. That's yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So a diagonal is there. Yep. Okay. Uh, a diagonal square is there. Yes.
Yes, yes. Now, this through the golden gut, we get the kursi or the platform of the tomb. And if we zoom in further, and then the actual, this is actually a 3D, a scan of the tomb done by a 3D printer, 3D scanner. This is an actual scan of the tomb complex. So it gives us the exact uh, two-dimensional imagery of the tomb on the actual scale. And then I have superimposed the analysis that I've done, and you can see that there is some accuracy to it. The alignment of the gates, the alignment of the tombs,
Yeah.
and the alignment of the mosque. And lastly, this is the kursi we have, and this is eventually the us leading to the tomb. I have forgotten to add a rotated square here. So if you are able to see my cursor,
Yes.
if you place a rotated square from along these corners, you get limit of that square that comes within. That gives you that outer
Yeah.
limit of the tomb.
Yeah. And it's also projecting towards the Qibla. Oh, maybe the diagonal.
It is no, no, well, the tombs this is the Qibla Rukh. This is
Yeah.
what you were referring to.
Yes. The diagonal. But
The Qibla Rukh is. Uh-huh.
I was just mentioning that the diagonal is pointing towards the Qibla. I was just trying to say that the the
No,
pointed
the Qibla
diagonal.
is in that direction, because this
Yeah.
particular it is pointing towards in some way, the Kaaba. So in conclusion, I would say that how uh, these sort of spiritual affiliations, and following these spiritual affiliations, we used to have such sacred spaces, and these sacred spaces used to act as uh, the artifacts that used to shape neighborhoods of that time. uh, and like uh, the followers used to go to the saints for knowledge, similar sort of role was played by these buildings, while they became the central landmarks of the neighborhoods they were built inside, and how they gave them a certain social, ecological, spiritual, and economic value, and still they are able to give the areas they are in these spiritual, economic, and social value. Still, India earns millions through Taj Mahal tourism annually. And you also know, here in Lahore also, how significant are uh, these structures such as the Miami tomb itself, Badshai Mosque, Wazir Khan Mosque, that pretty much lies inside in the heart of the world city. Uh, so that whole order uh, that was followed uh, on the personal level was also manifested outwardly in the form of architecture, and uh, the urban fabric of fabric surrounding that architecture. And even the houses and other buildings of the neighborhood, the madaris, the schools, shifa khanas, bimaristan, bimaristans, the hospitals, I meant to say. Uh, why all of these had a certain kind of forms, a certain kind of architectural elements? Because they like they were like disciples, or they were like murids of that central figure or that central artifact, and they are overshadowed by that presence. So this particular analogy of the saint and the disciple was also, reflected in the architecture of those cities, and uh, the urban fabric of those cities. And here, lastly, is an illustration of the city of Baghdad, and one may see that how such uh, um, uh, communal spaces used to guide uh, uh, the neighborhood, uh, the spaces that were culturally motivating, that were religiously motivating, the congregational spaces such as mosques and tombs, how they used to shape the cities and how they used to guide the urban fabric of the cities. So here I finished my presentation, and here is my humble tribute to Dara Shukwa. I wish I could give it more time, but inshallah, I think I would like to further anytime, soon, so anytime sooner or later, further reflect on uh, this beautiful story, and beautiful story of adherence and uh, servitude and submission towards the towards the ever so present divine spirit. Uh,
Right.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. And it was amazing. I was enjoying the presentation a lot. As I would like to emphasize here that the plan or the layout of the Shukun, the complex, was when you were doing the analysis of it, it reminded me of the Wazir Khan Mosque. It's somewhat like that. We have a central space where there's a grave, and also there is the ablution space, and then we have the mosque at the end, the praying area, and then a courtyard and a bazaar iman spaces. So it reminded me of those, and we have similar structures like Jahangir's Dome, I guess, as well, which might have been built upon the same concept of Charbagh. Like all the Mughal structures yes, they were built upon this, and we can find different structures in Lahore, and that's why the main heritage sites actually are actually creating the main concept of architecture in Lahore. So the saints are in fact the basis for all the artifacts. And yes, this was indeed very important to identify and to discuss why it's important, the saints, the role of saints, and the spiritual knowledge in the Islamic and arts, Islamic architecture and arts. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. It was amazing. It reminded me of Sir Taimur Khan Mumtaz as well, and Sir Kam Khan Mumtaz, their knowledge, because we have been taught by Sir Taimur Khan during our project about mosque, and it reminded me of all the things, and I'm so happy that I have learned again the whole hush-bish system from starting from, and it's quite humbling to learn about the Islamic architecture, Islamic geometry, and I wish that more and more people learn about it. So thank you so much for
Thank you. Thank you.
sharing
Thank
knowledge
you.
and for making time for this. Take very good care of
Thank
yourself,
you.
and I hope we have the great feedback from people about it.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity as well.
My pleasure.
You're most welcome.
Take care. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. Allah Hafiz.